You're going to look at some applications. So we're on page 107 of your workbook, example 7.37. So we're going to look at when we have a product and a sum of numbers. That's one type of problem. And then we're going to look at a rectangle problem as well. So you've done some integer type problems before, but I think they mainly involved consecutive integers was the setup, but you maybe had some other relationships as well. But we really need to make sure we're reading this carefully. The product of two positive integer numbers is 91, and the sum of the same two numbers is 20. Find the numbers. So it doesn't tell us that they're consecutive. So just don't jump to like, oh, let the first equal x and the second equal x plus 1. That's not going to work for this case. So we're going to set up a system of equations to help us out. So we have an x and a y, two different numbers. So let x equal the first number and y equals the second number is how I set that up. So the product is going to be, when we multiply them, x times y equals 91. That is our first equation. And then we also have a relationship that they add up, x plus y equals 20. So we can solve by substitution. We can let y equal 20 minus x. You could have just kind of done that from the get-go if you wanted. And now we're going to take that 20 minus x and plug it in for y. So now we have x times quantity 20 minus x equals 91. So we want to be careful here because our property that we're going to use for solving quadratics is the zero product property. It's not the 91 product property. So we have to make sure we don't just inadvertently set this each factor equal to 91. That's not going to work. We have to follow our process that I talked about before, where you have to simplify. And so we would have 20x minus x squared equals 91. Then we want to set everything equal to 0. Now I'm going to bring everything over to the right just so it stays, my lead coefficient stays positive. So I'm actually going to write this over here to have more room, but I'm going to write it as 0 equals x squared. So I'm just adding x squared to the right hand side and subtracting the 20x and then plus 91 because that's already on the right. This commutativity tells me I can do that. I can have my 0 on the left and my factors on the right. So now I'm going to factor this, and this one's kind of a little bit tricky. 91's not something you typically think of a lot, but we have x, and x splits up that way, and then the factors would be a minus 7 and a minus 13. Let me just double check that we have minus 7x minus 13x does in fact give me that 20x I'm looking for my middle term. And then my solution would be x equals 7 or x equals 13. So I set it so that x would be my first number. It can't actually be both. So I'm just going to say, since it's an or, x equals 7. So if x is 7, then y equals the 13 because y is 20 minus x, right? So that's going to be my 13. It doesn't really matter. I mean, they both kind of evens out in the wash, but I would say the first number is 7 and the second is 13. Okay, so that's answering in a sentence. So I have all my parts. I have my A, I have my B, I have my C, and my D. So for full points, especially when you get to Math 99 and you're doing lots of these, you have to have all the steps done out. You can't just like kind of hash it out. If you happen to do some scratch work and just sort of guessing around, you might come up with the answer, but you haven't followed the full process, so you wouldn't get the full points on the rubric. Okay, last one here for this chapter, and it's been a long chapter, but you guys are doing great. So here we have example 7.38. The length of a rectangle is 7 inches longer than it is wide. If the area is 198 square inches, what are the dimensions of the rectangle? So a lot of times we've been working with perimeter, but this case we're doing area. So area is length times width. We know that the length is 7 inches longer than it is wide. So we're going to say length, or L, is length equals W plus 7. So now we have a system. We know that the area is 198, so we can plug that in. So we have 198 equals the length, which is W plus 7, times the width, which we're just calling W. Now we need to simplify and solve. So we have 198 equals W squared plus 7W. I'm going to set this equal to 0. 0 equals W squared plus 7W minus 198. And now I need to factor. Okay, so this one's a little bit tricky to factor because 198 is something not too common that we look at a lot. So you might break it down into being 198 divided by 2. You would have 99 times 2. Then that breaks down to 9 times 11 and 3 by 3. So if you put it into prime factorization, then you can kind of play around with your factor pairs and figure those out. So I looked at 9 in the 2 here to be 18. That's where I got the 18, and then times 11 because I knew the difference between them would be 7, and that way I know the larger value has to go on the 18. So that's going to be W plus 18 to get the positive 7W. I would have to subtract 11W to get my middle term. Minus 11W plus 18W gives me my 7W I need in the middle. Then I'm going to set each factor equal to 0. W minus 11, or 0 equals W plus 18. So then I end up with W equals 11, or W equals negative 18. So I just, added the 11 to the side. Kind of went the other way around and then swapped the order. So I have, let me just write that out. A positive, so W equals 11 is the one that's going to work, and negative isn't going to work at all because I wouldn't have a negative length. So if W is 11, then L has to be 11 plus 7. The length is 18. So now we're going to say the width is 11 inches and the length is 18 inches. And that is it for this chapter. Really real happy about that. So I hope that this really, it's hard right now. It's all new, but this is really going to give you a good leg up for Math 99. We're expecting you to be really understanding of how to put the pieces together at an entry level, and then by pre-calc you should be very fluent with this, having messy numbers to work with and all that kind of stuff, and having lots of more moving parts. So have an awesome day, and let me know if you have any questions or if the homework is challenging, if you need some help with that, to try to make it so that there were plenty of video supports for the problems that I assigned.